why is every AI company going to Japan? And we have Bradley and Takumi joining us for the panel. Please. So I'll start with a quick introduction. To me, it's fascinating that companies are entering Japanese market and are interested in Japanese market. And I wanted to shape this panel to answer key questions and kind of like key mysteries for me as a person in Silicon Valley, seeing some patterns. And that's why I invited panelists to join me on this discussion, for people who have the experience, the global experience, different kind of experience, to share their perspectives. So with that, let's start with quick introductions. Bradley?
My name is Bradley. Currently a Chief Strategy Officer and CFO at Stockmark Inc, which is a startup that's building Japanese large language model. And we've raised about 5 billion Japanese yen to date, and we're currently raising even more because it takes a lot of money to build LLM. So, I was originally from Japan, spent half my life in the US, and came back to join this company. So, thank you.
All right, Takumi.
Hi, my name is Takumi. I think many of you know, like, I know many of you here. I'm an associate investor from Bonds Investment Group, and I normally focus on ESG topic. So AI is like AI is not focus, but we have invested some AI company like Stockmark eventually.
Actually, Bonds invested in us.
Yeah.
Did you know
Nice.
that?
I didn't know that.
It's a coincidence.
And prior to my current experiences, I was working for the private equity funds in Germany and the US VC fund. And I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Awesome. So with that, I'll start with the first talking point to you, Bradley. We've basically seen major moves like OpenAI's expansion plans, Cohere raising 500 million funding from Fujitsu, Lux Capital investing and leading a $30 million round into Sakana that is now a unicorn. What do you think is driving this sudden interest in Japan from global AI players?
Because we have Kuminka houses. Just kidding. Well, so besides the market size, right? Japan is basically arguably the biggest market outside of US, excluding China, right? Because no one can go into China. But anyways, well, besides that, we have a lot of infrastructure, like US-based infrastructure, like Google Cloud, AWS. Like for any international companies, we'll get the benefit of being in Japan and operate as a US company, right? Because there's an infrastructure. And then second of all, the Japanese government is also backing that investment into AI. So for example, our Stockmark was selected by METI, Ministry of Economy of Japan, earlier this year to participate in the AI sponsorship program. And I think Google was providing the GPU for us, right? And we were able to build 100 billion parameter LLM for free. But if you were to pay the retail price, it would have been over 1 billion Japanese yen, right? So I think we got really lucky to get selected by the METI's program. And other than us, there's Sakana, there's Prefer Network, they were also selected, and there are a few others that got selected as well. So the government is also backing the development of AI in Japan. So infrastructure and the government backing are the two biggest, I think, the AI ecosystem that's supporting the growth of AI. And I think that's attracting the international companies. And if I were to add, it could be very controversial, but there are a lot of talents in Japan, right? They can build AI, they're very talented. Tokyo Institute of Technology, University of Tokyo, Kyoto University. Do you know what they do? They're not building AI. They're getting paid $8,000 a year at some big tech company. Why don't we hire them and build AI that's going to print money, right? So I think that's another angle of coming to Japan and secure high quality talent at a moderate price, right? So that's, I think that's could be a little controversial, but that's actually happening. So talent, government backing, and infrastructure. These are the three key attractive point of being operating AI company in Japan.
Makes sense. So Takumi, from your perspective of venture capitalism, being venture capitalist, what do you think is happening right now with American Silicon Valley funds opening offices here? As I mentioned, Andreessen Horowitz is making a big move to open an office here, and others will follow. Why do you think others are, coming here, and what does it actually signify for the venture capital as an industry?
I can't mention the name, but actually I was having the meeting today at the New Otani to talking with one of the largest VC fund from the US, and they're interested in the Japanese market. And I was actually asking why. We just get the topic to talk here. The full perspective.
Closer.
Obviously, many of the VC funds want to come here for obtaining the cheap capital. That's like one big topic, like unfortunately. But they saw actually the growth on the global presence, not really the preparedness of the global presence in Japan. So for instance, like last 30 years, we have been facing a strong inflation, but like finally, they started to seek to have foreigners' help or the global players' help to like improving Japanese society. So compared to 10 years ago, the VCs or entrepreneurs see that more opportunities in Japan. That's the comment I get often. And as he mentioned, the initiative of the government is quite large. As well as talent, like instead of going to the traditional companies, and there's like the smartest talent of Japan tend to try to opening their own startup. So the ecosystem is growing to reach the place that where they're more, how to say, attractive. Like what we saw in Cohere 10 years ago is expected to happen in 5 years time frame. That's like the comments that I have heard.
And what do you think, as Bradley mentioned, on like cheap talent being a controversial topic? What do you think about that?
I think totally agree. For instance, if you want to hire someone AI engineer, probably 1/4 of the US talent. And even for business, for instance, if you want to hire a McKinsey graduate, you just need to pay 50K USD but the US you need to pay like 120 or something. So the well-educated people, we have high education system and people tend to be quite smart here, but they just didn't have the international exposure. And they have like issue with language, but if you can overcome with language barrier and things, the talent we have is quite like I think the top tier even compared to US and China and India.
Thank you. That makes sense. So speaking of the barriers of entry, Bradley, you have been advising startups on the board of the 500 startups as the global mentor. What are the typical market entry blockers and maybe most common misconceptions that companies have about entering Japan?
I think it's less of a misconception, but more like the cultural differences. So in the US, there's a significant belief that if your product solves problems, it'll sell, right? If the product is high quality enough, it'll sell. But in Japan, when it comes to like enterprise sales, maybe not so much in SMB sales, but you're gonna have to do a lot of customization. You're gonna have to be doing a lot of talking, proposing. You have to understand what the company is doing over the next 10, 20 years. What are the initiatives that you're building? And so, instead of just the quality of resolving some issues that you can see, but more like proposing to like its sales process it's more complicated and deep. It takes a long time. So that's one blocker. And another blocker could be, I think it's about people. Like when you hire somebody based off of, if you like that person or not, because that person speaks English. does not necessarily mean that person understands the Japanese market, right? Have the client, Japanese connections. So if you're coming to Japan, you want to do your business the Japanese way if you're targeting Japanese customers. So that culture differences and customer customization to Japanese customers are key blockers and challenges.
Japanese way. I like that because it's my second time in Japan. First time was a year ago, and I was here as a tourist, kind of like doing the traditional Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka route, and I was fascinated by the things that just don't make any sense, And look, I come from Ukraine, so I got culture shock when I moved to America. But I adjusted to that reality. I adjusted to the capitalism and kind of like thinking about things from the economical perspective, right? That for something to exist, it has to make financial sense. And then, I come to Japan and I see all of these things that don't make any financial sense, yet they exist. And with that, when I saw companies all of a sudden rushing into Japan, I was like, there's going to be a disconnect between Americans kind of like just rushing here and being impatient and just like, slamming the door and getting in and like, let's get the business done and all of this like mindset. So Japanese way, I think that's really a definitive, blocker for companies. So Takumi, in terms of the competition, let's say that there is a local AI ecosystem, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of AI companies coming from Silicon Valley. How do you think this kind of like competition will play out in the next 5 years? Obviously we have like OpenAI entering the market, opening up the office. We have, for example, friends of mine, Upstage, Korean company that also released Japanese LLM, also entering the market. And then we have Sakana, a local company doing the Japanese LLM, Stockmark doing the LLM here. How do you think this competition will play out?
It's a good question. Regarding to that better, so it depends on the strengths of the company has. Like today, many AI companies in Japan, they're relying on the Japanese language and cultural perspective. So because OpenAI is not really perfect for like Japanese language, it's getting better really radically first, but still not the quality we seek. And so these companies that focusing on only that topic, they will lose sooner or later because the speed of the development of the big giant is fast enough to eliminate them before IPO. I'm quite sure about it. But at the same time, like these talent, OpenAI opening the office here, or like some like Microsoft investing 2.9 billion, I guess. These talent that come along with the big giant may actually create new startups with different perspective, and maybe they become the global player. Like Sakana AI is actually from Google in some sense. So I can't expect it to see such kind of entrepreneurs later. Yeah. And yeah.
I think it's a similar pattern that we see in Europe. So, for example, Mistral, that you probably heard about, is a European LLM company from France. And they also came out from the big tech and decided to spin it up as the separate company. And I agree with you that whenever big tech comes into the market, or big startups, they bring the expertise and talent, and they kind of like level up the local talent to that. But the question is, as a venture capitalist, would you invest into a local company that is just being like built and growing that expertise, or into someone that has already figured it out and kind of like scaling into the markets?
I think the Japanese, I don't think Japanese funds actually capable of investing to these the figure out companies. Our capital is too small, unfortunately. So we need to invest to these entrepreneurs. But if the company is trying to solve the new issue, the global issue rather than Japanese, I would love to invest into that company. I already invested myself as an angel investor to form the AI company. I mean, not Japanese, unfortunately, but just because I felt like they may do something. So.
Makes sense. Bradley, do you have something to add on this topic?
It's a very complicated topic because when you look at how the venture capitals invest, there are different tiers, right? Like early stage, mid stage, and later stage. And you guys are early stage, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. Mid stage, early stage, mid stage. So if the investors, so Japanese capital allocation is only dedicated to 7% of the capital is dedicated to later stage investment. What that means is if you have a big startup, you want to raise big money, there's not many Japanese investors investing in you, right? So that's the problem that I'm facing today. I'm currently raising funds and talking to a few Japanese venture capitals, but there are only about a handful of those who have minimum ticket size of 1 billion Japanese yen. So that's a big problem of growing a company to a global scale in Japan. You have to go to like overseas non-Japanese investors with a big check size. But if you're starting a company small, and if you're an early stage startup, there are so many venture capitalists like him investing in like enthusiastic entrepreneurs, like regardless of your nationality, where you're coming from, or Japanese or Korean or international, it doesn't really matter. You just have to be able to convince this guy that you're building something exciting and interesting. So, and actually like international perspective is very, very important in Japan. GDP is not growing as fast before, interest rate is low, and you see like Japan by itself cannot be sustainable, right? They have to go international, they have to go digital. So if you're bringing in AI and digital and you're an international person, you're the perfect fit for starting a company in Japan. So I think that's what the Japanese as a country needs, and venture capitalists is also looking for that. So yeah.
I actually agree with the point. That if you like get the investment from Japanese VCs, you need to make a kabushiki gaisha, KK. So watch out. Like maybe possible, but it's difficult otherwise. And also add to that, I think the Japanese big corporate, it's still big corporate in globally, but they don't have they didn't really adapt start industry revolution. And now I think that's also the reason why the international AI company has strong interest in Japan, because also the Japanese company, they seek the AI as a solution to compete with the US giants.
That makes sense. I think there's a lot of like intersections currently happening, like the ecosystems learning from each other and utilizing things from each other. Which brings me to another question. You guys both have been exposed to Silicon Valley as the AI ecosystem. How different it is, and which kind of like what things can we learn from Silicon Valley here in Japan? What are the things that Silicon Valley can learn from Japanese ecosystem? And I understand that the AI ecosystem is still early stage here, but that the innovation and technology ecosystem is the one that used to be a leader in technology and innovation world. And it produced a lot of things like, Kanban and all of these things that we're currently using in the Western world. What are the things of the next wave that can be kind of like synergetic? So, Bradley?
That's another very, very difficult question to answer.
I did invite you for simple questions.
Sure. I tend to believe that when it comes to digital technology, Japan is always behind, right? 10 years, 20 years behind. And we're always learning from Israeli technologies, Silicon Valley technologies. And when you see like big Japanese startups, they're basically taking the business model of the US, right? But they're doing a customization, again, the local Japanese way of doing business. So that's something that we can learn, right? Adopt to the local way of doing business practice. That's the number one thing. And another thing is that I think it could be both US and Japan, but in order to grow your company, the partnership is key. So know the Japanese players, right? What are the ecosystem players in Japan? When you're building payment capability in your AI products, go partner with GMO or SVPS or PayPay, right? Something like that, because that really allows you to capture the wallet share of payments in Japan. So So that's one example, right? I was a head of product partnership at Uber Japan previously, and so I was leading that process. And so I think I said earlier about like building, using the infrastructure, right? Like it's not only Google Cloud or AWS, the international big giants, but there are so many strong local players. Like SoftBank is pretty big. Sakura Internet, they got the funding from the Japanese government to build the infrastructure, like data center, right? So those are the guys that we never heard of in Silicon Valley, right? Those are the Japanese players that we never heard of in Silicon Valley. But those are the key players that can give you access to local customers, right? And they're going to give you the credentials of, hey, our product is secure now, our product is trusted in the Japanese market, so that's why we can sell to you. We're a Japanese company, Stockmark is a Japanese company, but we're still facing a similar problem. We have over 400 enterprise customers, super enterprise customers. And we have released a product partnership with Panasonic last month. We're still facing the same problem. Like, we have to go through the same process of how do you secure the private data, right, that Panasonic has. Well, or we have to demonstrate that we're using AWS. Well, does the AWS transfer the data to somewhere else? No, we're using the local AWS, and so we're secure. We have to demonstrate the security when it comes to AI. So partnership with local players is key, and regardless of where the company is from, like you have to go through the same process of proving yourself that you're credit worthy to do business with local Japanese people. So yeah, so that's one key localization process. It's a good thing.
Takumi?
So the one thing I believe that the Japanese companies or AI company, it's actually in general for Japanese company like as well, but that need to learn from the US or European, pro-US, let's say, is that we focus on 100. So the idea is that, as you know, that Amazon's 20/80 rules. So we focus on 100 instead of 20 that makes 80% of profit. And we focus on 100, so what happens is that we tend to do 80 and we don't do this 20% that will make the 80% profit. So this kind of the selection, the prioritizing part that I often see that the Japanese company are kind of missing. And maybe that's something we need to learn for like more effective the corporate the work culture like Japan for like the I'm a bit nervous for hyper growth that we don't really have here. And things Japan can teach to the world is that I think the partnership is like what the Bradley mentioned is quite true. But add to that maybe how we care each stakeholders in sense that maybe not really business perspective or BC perspective, but in sense of the ethical manners that today's topic is AI for good. I really think that the Japan has one of the best culture that cares about stakeholders, and oftentimes you can see the contract that really trust-based and don't have any safety kind of closures, and I don't think that's smart. But at the same time, this kind of trust building and the respect to stakeholder might be great for Silicon Valley, especially what we saw in 2022 and 23.
Yeah, I think that 80-20 and then the 100 is an interesting framework to think about it. So the last point before we wrap it up and open up to Q&A, what is, like from your perspective, what is the most exciting thing in the Japanese AI ecosystem that is not getting enough attention? Something that is not being publicized, or maybe Westerners or people in Silicon Valley are not aware of, but it's definitely happening. Bradley?
I'd say Japan is very slow to adopt technology, so that's one thing. So what I mean by that is that there are a lot of opportunities to sell your AI product in the Japanese market because the traditional Japanese companies are afraid of using AI. So when you come in and tell them, hey, here's one specific product that's going to solve your problem, they might start using it, right? That's why there are so many small startups in Japan run by inexperienced founders, not like serial entrepreneurs in the US, but inexperienced college, fresh out of college, startup founders are proliferating in Japan, and early stage investors investing in them. And they're building AI. They have no idea what the AI is, right? They hire engineers to build the AI product. So if you already know what the AI is, building a product, you can come in, go break the language barrier, break the culture barrier. You have actually a lot of chance to sell in Japan. So I'd say because Japan is behind, you have a lot of opportunity.
That's a good one. Takumi, from your perspective?
I think I would say it's not something exciting regarding to the Japanese AI ecosystem, but for entrepreneur, I think this is kind of exciting. But we have a lot of subsidies from the Japanese government, like NEDOs and like several like the government, the agents. I mean, you get the NEDOs subsidy, and without any equity, the trade, or without any like the obligation to pay cash credit, and also like as he mentioned that many of the giants are trying to help the companies. So I think the financial perspective, Japan has great opportunities, especially for early stage AI companies. And after that, cheap capital, like we need to use it. For instance, is it recorded or not?
Yes. Yes. Don't say confidential things.
Okay, so
If you said so like already,
so
let's do that. That's it.
you need to have connection. So you need to hire some right people, but debt you can obtain from the bank is insanely cheap if you do right. Like I used to be private equity, so you can imagine how we get money compared to Japanese way and the European or American way. I learned that the cost of debt, interest differences was 20x, like 20x. Can you believe it? So you can borrow it 1/20 of the interest rate here compared to some countries, and you should use it.
What's the current debt rate in the US? Is it like 7%, 10%?
No, it's like 5
something. That's a lighter rate. Okay.
Yeah. So here's now is they're trying to increase, but if you know, it's recorded. But it's it depends on how you lend money and the credibility of you and stuff like that, and what kind of the purpose of use of debt. But I really see that at least 1/10 you're promised. So take that advantage.
Yeah, the mortgage rate in Japan is about 0.5%, 0.4%. In the US, it's like 7%, right? Depending on your credit rating. So it's huge. Just borrow debt and build a product.
Yeah, that's actually a very cool insight. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.